Good evening and welcome to Real Talk, where every Sunday night we offer insight, education, and resources to in-home caregivers and those affected in their world. These are the children, the parents, the extended family, and everyone who loves them. Our goal is to offer real life topics and learning through discussing real issues and offering real solutions. And tonight I'm very excited to welcome a guest that I've been wanting to talk to about this for a while, Maggie Hayford. Say your last name for me. Is it Sipe?
Hayford
Okay,
Sipe. Yep.
perfect. I always know everybody's first names. I don't always know their last names very well. She is a newborn care specialist, sleep coach, lactation educator, and is now on her way to becoming a NICU coach. And we have had a couple conversations now, long and short, about what that's going to look like. And I'm really excited for what Maggie's going to do. And so I was like, you've got to come on. We've got to talk about this. And so tonight we're going to talk about that. And she's going to share with us about caring for NICU babies and their families, because it's an all-encompassing approach. It's not just about the baby. This impacts everybody. But before we jump in, first, I want to say welcome, Maggie. It's really great to have you tonight.
Thank you so much. I am extremely excited to be talking to you, and especially about this subject.
Yeah, I'm excited about it too. Before we kind of jump into this with both feet, because this is a big topic, can you share with our audience a little bit about your career, kind of how you got to this point and why this interests you so much? Because to me, this is very fascinating.
Of course. So I started right after high school in the medical field, kind of baby stepping my way along the different job positions. I started as a medical assistant in a pediatric office, which, I mean, everybody's been to a pediatric office. There's a ton of babies and, well, I mean, even into 25 sometimes. But after that, I decided that I wanted more, I'm going to say, an adrenaline rush. So I became an EMT. And while doing that, I actually got a position in an emergency room working as a patient care tech. So I was still experiencing all ages, but I found out and was asked a lot by the other staff to be in the room with the children, be in the room with the babies. Nurses are, especially ER nurses, they're kind of gruff and don't take crap from anybody type of people.
Oh, they've got a
But
tough job.
Yeah, but they still don't want to start an IV on a baby. It tugs at their heartstrings, and I don't like it either, but I know that doing something in the short term is going to be beneficial, for the babies in the long run. So I was always the person asked to help with the IVs or any procedures that the babies and children needed help with. And so from there, I just kind of found my love for children, and then getting more and more into dealing with babies. I wanted to become a NICU nurse. That career path didn't pan out, but I was able to transition to the pediatric floor at the hospital when it opened, and then float over to the NICU for a couple years. And so I really just found my passion for helping newborns. It's very rewarding to be able to figure out a puzzle, especially when the people you're helping can't tell you what's going on. So that's really why I found a love for newborns, and I was fortunate enough to find your program and go through it. And so I've been a newborn care specialist for the past few years and wanting to really help NICU families from here on out. So
yeah, and a lot of NICU families do end up hiring newborn care specialists, either because they want to feel that extra measure of support when they've got a singleton, but also a lot of times because we're dealing with multiples. and
Yes.
a great number of our multiples spend time in the NICU, or it's because they've got other kids at home and they need an extra set of really focused, intentional hands. And you and I got to talking about what you want to do, what your goals are. And I was just so excited when I heard about this because I instantly recognized that there's a need for this. And sure, I have experience working with NICU babies. I've been in the NICU, visited the client babies, taking care of them when they come home, that sort of thing. But that's entirely different than the kind of background that you bring to this. And so you bring something really special to our industry as a whole, but to what your goals are in terms of offering coaching for families experiencing the NICU in whatever form that looks like. And so I kind of want to talk about what some of that looks like. I would love if you could explain just a little bit for our audience who might not be as familiar with this, kind of some of the main differences between a term baby that's born when nature intends for them to be born, everything seems okay, and a NICU baby who's here early and obviously has some needs that require that extra medical attention. Ultimately the goal is they come home and they're as healthy as can be, but there's some differences. Talk to us about that a little bit.
Sure, sure. So, you know, babies are supposed to be born as close to 40 weeks as possible. And working in that part of the hospital setting as well, um, there's not, the rooms are kept more quiet, home births are more quiet. But babies who are born and then whisked off to the NICU, it's a lot of noise. It's a lot of jarring. Um, it's not a calm experience. And so they get pretty disrupted. Um, and that's just within like the first hour. Full term babies, they get to go home relatively soon. And so they're not set into a routine. Um, and in the NICU, the routine is a lot different. So as a newborn care specialist, we want back is best to sleep, um, swaddling. And a lot of time in the NICU, babies are on all these monitors. And so they are on their sides or even on their bellies because the nurses and staff can monitor them to make sure that everything's okay. But then they also have all this extra stuff attached to them too that isn't, comfortable or anything when they can't really do much about it, unfortunately. But um, so they just, yeah, they, the differences are vast, but that's why we're here to help.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, and I would imagine that, and if I'm wrong, obviously correct me because I don't know this, but I'm just guessing on it, is part of the reason they're not swaddled is because with all the wires and monitors and things, it just makes it really challenging, especially if they had to get to a baby quickly to have to deal with an extra blanket. So what do they do with them? How do they keep them warm in the NICU?
so the temperature in the NICU is kept at a higher level. Um, the beds that the NICU babies are in are called isolettes. Um, they sometimes have domes over them, um, especially the ones that are really compromised
Mhm.
and need that extra level of protection. Um, but then also most of the isolettes have heaters actually on top. And so there is a heat element coming down onto the newborn.
Mhm.
Um, and yes, swaddling in the NICU is not done as frequently on the babies who are more, or I guess I should say less complicated and needing less immediate attention. They'll start to swaddle them, but then they haven't been swaddled from the beginning. So they get used to the freedom
Mhm.
that we work up to with full term babies. But yeah, so they're surrounded by blankets, not necessarily covered with blankets. And I mean, I'm not talking about big, thick blankets, but like receiving blankets and rolled up burp cloths and that sort of thing to kind of keep them in a certain position. Because, yeah, like I said, they can put them on their side or on their belly or on their back to just, and they rotate them so that they don't get, container syndrome and flat spots and that sort of thing. So,
Mhm. And so if babies have been in the NICU, particularly if they've been there for an extended period of time, are there like difficulties that they have? Do they struggle to adapt when they come home? Do they struggle while they're in there? What's it like for them? And what are they facing?
so from what I've noticed, having friends who have had babies in the NICU and brought them home, we've had many conversations about the differences. I mean, these parents, are at the bedside, so they don't notice at the time all of the noises in a NICU, even though the general rule in the NICU is to keep levels low. But you still have beeping machines and people running around and shuffling, and even a sound machine for a NICU baby might not always be enough noise once they come home.
Mhm.
So it's hard to go from a loud environment to a silent environment. And I've had not difficulty, but I've noticed difficulty, I guess, with trying to provide and create a good sleep environment for NICU babies just coming home to where they can slowly adapt and we can get them onto a normal home life schedule. So,
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. We, as humans, we tend to get used to whatever's around us. And, it's kind of like I moved into a house and now I hear a train going by every night. It takes a while for us to adapt. I would imagine going from noise to quiet is the same kind of adaptation, just in reverse.
yes. Well, and then all that extra stimulation,
Mhm.
for us as newborn care specialists and in home, we teach parents to, wind down and have, a 10-minute window, I guess you could say, of low stimulation before a nap or before bedtime.
Mhm.
And NICU babies don't really get that. They just adapt and they're tired, so they sleep through all the noise. And then if you give them a wind down period, they kind of are so used to the stimulation that they can't calm down. It's like for us being overtired too. We are so tired
Mhm.
that we can't get out of our minds and going, and then going to sleep is difficult.
Yeah. Even babies who haven't been in the NICU can struggle with that. I've worked with a few clients
Yes.
whose babies were so overtired they couldn't go to sleep. So it makes total sense that an NICU baby would struggle with that as well. And as we mentioned kind of in the beginning, this isn't just about the babies.
Right.
This NICU stay impacts families, it impacts parents, it impacts any extended family that might be involved or is particularly close to the family. It impacts siblings. Talk to us a little bit about some of those things. I know what I've experienced working with families who have babies in the NICU, but you've worked with a whole lot more families in that kind of situation. Share with us kind of some of the things that affect these families.
So the family dynamic is a lot more difficult for NICU babies and NICU families, um, because visitation is, even not in a pandemic setting, visitation is limited. Um, there are time windows where even the parents are allowed to be in there. Um, and then different parts of the day, the NICU itself has like a quiet time. And so they ask the parents or visiting family members to come back at a different time. But then NICUs are also very small and don't have usually rooms per patient or per baby. And so it gets a little crowded. And so having a big family gathering isn't going to happen or going to be allowed to happen. Because not only that, but then going back to the stimulation again, having all those people in there is going to stimulate the other babies in the NICU too. But then what I've been told from families with babies in the NICU is that it's daunting. You have this tiny little baby that you want to hold and want to touch. And depending on the age of the baby, sometimes even a touch can be too stimulating. And so you kind of have to sit, parents will have to sit back and watch, or just hold a hand, or the baby has too many monitors connected. And so holding them is different. NICUs are really great about doing skin to skin because it's just so beneficial. But you need extra hands in order to accomplish that. And then also, with the stimulation, having siblings come in and that sort of stuff, they do that as a slow progression while the baby is in the NICU and not just all at once. Whereas a full-term baby or a hospital delivery, everybody can come in once the baby's born and hold the baby and all this sort of stuff. But the NICU is very strict in their protocols and how things happen.
Right. And I would imagine that even once the baby is allowed to come home, once they're discharged from the NICU, and even while they're in there, there's got to be like a family dynamic, even when they're not in the hospital, that creates a whole new set of challenges, especially if they're siblings. Are you familiar with that, and kind of what do you know?
So from what I've experienced, having siblings at home offers its own, I mean, just in general, offers its own unique challenges, but even though the babies are released from the hospital, you still consider these babies fragile in a lot of the cases, just because that's what you've kind of known since their birth. So having a bunch of people around, and you just don't know what you need help with, even if you do have other children. And so I do want to touch on that a little bit, but yeah, I mean, just having people around who you can talk to and who can help watch the siblings, or make a meal, or do a load of laundry, like that's all beneficial and going to help your family dynamic too, and because you want to have as least stress as possible, and which, I mean, we all understand as newborn care specialists, that's kind of our whole role, is to reduce the stress of bringing baby home. So
yeah, I've even gone so far as to make a laminated checklist that I will give to clients and say, let's put this up on the fridge, or let's put this on the counter with an erasable marker. And when people come over, I tell them, you say you want to come help, but we all know that in the end, what a lot of people want to do is come hold babies. But that's usually not what the family needs. And so I always tell them, pick, depending on how many things are on there and how many people are coming, pick 2 or 3 items on that list. And once you've completed them and checked them off, then you can hold a baby. And that way, anytime somebody's coming to visit, something practical gets handled too. Now, sometimes a parent might need a baby held so they can go take a shower. Absolutely. But oftentimes you are 100% right on. It's make a meal, do some laundry, vacuum, dust, play with my toddler. Those things
Yep.
are so important. And I think a lot of times we don't remember that. We kind of don't value it. Do you have any other tips for maybe somebody out there whose family is experiencing this and they want to help?
Yes. So if you have a family member with a baby in the NICU, or if you yourself have a baby in the NICU, um, just remember that you are doing the best that you can, and that, well, and this I guess is just for, the parents with a baby in the NICU, but you're doing the best you can. And really don't hesitate to ask for help. I mean, like we just talked about, having somebody make you a meal or vacuum, do a load of laundry is going to help so much in taking a load off of you. Um, for the people with family in the NICU, sometimes parents just need to talk and not necessarily look for answers, but just listening to your friend or family member can help a lot as well. With me having working in the hospital and having friends with babies in the NICU, just being there when they couldn't was helpful. Like it was just a trusting set of eyes on their baby, but you also have to be able to talk about what you're going through and just, yeah, rely on others basically, which is really hard for a lot of people.
Yeah, it really is. I was talking with somebody just yesterday about that topic, about relying on others and trusting others. And what this person shared with me was probably the most critical aspect of it is that if I'm the support person and if you're the person going through it, it's important that I, in some way, shape, or form, listen without judgment.
Yes.
Because a lot of times she said, I don't need solutions and I don't need to feel judged. I just need to get this emotion out. I need to get these feelings out. I need to talk about it. And some of the things I feel are kind of scary and I don't want to feel judged for those things. And I thought,
Yes.
wow, what a insight that a lot of times we don't think about.
Yeah.
We want to fix it, or we're used to
Yes.
or we're used to being able to fix it. And sometimes
Right.
you just can't.
Right. And I mean, we typically with our, full-term babies, we, follow a schedule and or initiate a schedule, set up a schedule. But the NICU babies kind of have their own idea of what's going on. They're not necessarily behind, but it's going to take them a little bit longer to catch up to their birth date or a developmental milestone. And, it's perfectly fine. A lot of NICU babies, whether they're preterm or have some medical reason that they're in the NICU, I mean, they come out just perfectly fine and normal, and um, they just need that extra little bit of attention and patience and guidance.
Mhm. So if you were talking to a nanny or a newborn care specialist, because that's who most of our audience is, you're talking to them. If you could say to them, look, even if you don't take anything else away from this, here's the one thing I want you to take away from this. Here's what I want you to know as a nanny or a newborn care specialist working with a family who has a NICU baby. What would you tell them?
So I say anyway, this is just kind of one of my philosophies, but if you are unsure of something, find somebody who knows about whatever the subject is or the issue is or your question is, and don't be afraid to ask. I mean, if you don't think something is going right, be an advocate for yourself and for the baby and for the family. Knowing our developmental milestones and that sort of thing, where we're supposed to get them on that schedule, and just knowing that, well, I guess, so sorry, two things. Have patience.
Mhm.
So it'll happen. It just might take longer than what we're used to.
Mhm.
So
Absolutely. And those are two things I think that if we remember those and apply them, it makes a lot of this a lot easier, because even when we're not the parents, we want to fix it. We want to make
yeah,
it better, and especially those of us that are newborn care specialists, our passion is seeing these babies and these families grow and thrive. And so when it doesn't go quite the way we think it should, or the books tell us it should, it's always a little bit of a struggle. I try and tell newer care specialists, because one of our students, her name's Stacy, and she said this to me a long time ago, and I've never forgotten it, which is babies didn't read the books. And so we got to work with what they show us rather than what we think they should. I am so, well, you know this already. I'm so excited about what it is that you want to do and what I think this can bring to the care of families. And you've already shared some really great information with us, and I'm excited to see what comes in the future. But if before we kind of wrap up, is there anything else that you want to make sure that you share with our audience?
oh gosh, let's see. um yes. Of course there is. I could talk for for a day.
Right.
Except for this moment, apparently.
Yeah.
uh, um yeah, just, I guess, going back to having patience and knowing yourself. There are a lot of great books out there, for parents, for providers. Um, if you know you're going into a situation where they are in the NICU for any amount of time, um, brush up on something, reach out to somebody, ask some questions. Don't be afraid to reach out. I mean, I'm always available too. So if you have questions, don't hesitate to ask. But um, yeah, just give yourself some grace and some patience and keep trucking.
Right. I love that you said that about brush up on it, because a lot of times I see questions like in a student group or on a Facebook group, and I think, I know that's in your training. Go back and brush up on it. And we actually have a curriculum. I'm working with premature babies in the advanced newborn care specialist. We touch on preemies in the foundational. We touch on lots of aspects of things.
Mhm.
And we spend a decent amount of time in it, but we go much more in depth into the medical issues, that sort of thing, around premature babies in the advanced program. But there's also resources. So you're a resource in the community. There's a lot of newborn care specialists who have solid experience. And we have at least 3 people on our mentoring team that have really good premature baby experience. And that a lot of times comes with NICU experience. So there are resources within the NCS and nanny community that can be a great resource. But I also love that you brought up books, because there are some really fantastic books out there. That's where I first learned when I was going to experience my first set of premature babies who spent some time in the NICU. It was a set of multiples, and I was like, now what? I know how to deal with term babies. Now what? And I got my hands on every book I could find. So I'm a geek. I love to read. I love to research. And so I'm always an advocate for getting a good book and learning from that also. Um, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing some information. I'm really excited for what you want to do for families and caregivers around supporting babies who've been in the NICU. So I really want to say thanks for joining us tonight, Maggie. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I have been looking forward to this since we first started talking about it. So, yeah, I just am very excited and honored that you wanted to have this conversation tonight.
Yeah, I'm grateful for it. It's been an honor to have you share with us and to share the takeaways for our audience who are watching this. And if you have questions about this topic or anything related to caring for NICU babies, please put them in the feed and tag Maggie or tag Newborn Care Solutions, and we'll make sure that you get answers. And if you're wanting to watch this segment, catch any of our past Real Talk episodes, or access any of our other educational content, go to newborncaresolutions.com and click on the Education tab. And you can also find all of our Real Talks on YouTube. You just go to the YouTube search engine and you type Real Talk Newborn Care Solutions, and they all come up for you. So thanks for joining us and have a great evening, everyone.